Welcome to the 330 Sports Show. My name is Justin Coffin, and today is Tuesday, October 27th, 2020. We are broadcasting live from downtown Youngstown, Ohio, and we are produced by Joe Danier's Youngstown Studio Network. You can also find us on YouTube through the Youngstown Studio page and on iHeart, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. So make sure you check that out. Usually we upload those about 24 hours after the show airs. Can you hit the Anchorman one for me?
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
All right, we have an awesome feature we have added to the show. You can always call in live, which is 330-595-1600, 330-595-1600. However, we have an awesome new show that an awesome new feature to the show that we just added. This is basically going to be a voicemail and text line. So we want your reactions during games, after games, when news breaks, things like that. We want in-game reactions or overreactions, whatever it might be. This line's going to be open 24/7. So we really encourage you to use this. Again, that number is going to be 330-333-5265. And, hopefully we get some really good feedback on that where we can use it into the show, whether that's, like I said, a voicemail or a text message that we can answer, or, maybe give us some talking points that we maybe didn't think about during the show. So again, we encourage you to use both of those lines. On today's show, we're going to talk about the weekend that was in sports. So the Browns picked up another victory. They moved to 5-2 in a shootout against the Bengals. We'll talk about that game. The Pittsburgh Steelers stay perfect. The only undefeated team left in the NFL. They are 6-0, and they held off a late charge from the Tennessee Titans, who were previously undefeated. We'll get into that game. We had some crazy finishes at the pro and the college level. We'll talk a little bit about that. If you are a betting person, I'm personally not a bettor unless I'm in Vegas, but there were some interesting what's called bad beats this weekend. We'll talk about a couple of those. Big Ten football return this weekend. We'll talk about Ohio State and a couple of the other games. We'll talk a little bit about the World Series, NFL power rankings, college football top 25, and finally some of your favorite Halloween movies that might be out there just as Halloween approaches on Saturday. So once again, the numbers at the bottom, if you're watching the show live, 330-595-1600, or if you want to call and leave a voicemail or text, 330-333-5265. So let's get into it a little bit. Let's start with the Browns and Bengals. I'm gonna bring in Joe Danier, and we're gonna go with over a little bit about the Browns-Bengals game.
Okay.
So
a little bit? Come on.
A lot. There's going to be a lot. There's a ton to talk about in this game. So obviously we know, the Browns had a dramatic final drive to come back and win that game, 37-34. Overall, what were your thoughts about that game? What'd you think about it?
I thought when the game started unfolding in the beginning, I thought, oh, here we go. It'll totally fall apart, wheels come off and whatever. And then something happened, snap, and it became a completely different game.
I mean, Baker Mayfield started that game 0 of 5 with an interception and had 0 passing yards at the end of the first quarter. So Good,
say it.
As a Browns fan, you were thinking, I mean, do we bring in Case Keenum? Do we, is Baker really the guy? And then, also in that very first passing play, you lose Odell Beckham, and you think you might have lost your starting center, J.C. Tretter. He goes down.
That was a scary moment right there.
I mean, you're losing 2 of your best players on that first game. Luckily, Tretter was able to come in, and we found out yesterday that we're going to be without Odell the rest of the year. He did tear his ACL, so obviously we wish him well. And I know there's some doubters and some haters of Odell. and some people that maybe don't appreciate his talent. He at times has struggled. He at times has been, I mean, let's just put it, he's some pain in the ass sometimes, you know?
Little diva.
Yeah. Yep. And sometimes he's more hype than production. But what he did do is draw a lot of attention to himself from the defense. So the Browns lose that dynamic playmaker, you know, that can take the top off of defense and, you know, opens up the run game and things like that. So that's going to be a big loss. But I am not in the camp. You know, you hear people say the Browns are going to be better with Odell. Like, how, you know, he's still a top 10 to 15 wide receiver in the league. You can't say you're better without that player on your team. Now, did Baker look better without him on the field after he went down? Absolutely, 100%. But you know, sometimes I think when a guy goes down, the people behind him have that mentality of, you know, next man up. You got to step up, play the game, you know, win it for him, whatever it might be.
Well, even in like preseason, when you start like taking some guys that would not otherwise be playing, the whole team takes on a different characteristic depending on the chemistry of the people that are on that field. Right. And you know, we didn't get to see that with preseason this time. It's just like, this feels like last year's Browns because it's the same players that are on there. But when you mix it up and take, you know, 10 guys out for injury plus Odell goes back, and it's literally a brand new team. And maybe Baker has to mesh with different types of different roles of people, not necessarily the ones that are in there now.
Exactly. Well, and you look at what Baker was working with, and, you know, credit to the guys that stepped up. You had, you know, we talked about him last week. Donovan Peoples-Jones scores the game-winning touchdown, he had 0 catches, and, you know, he's a rookie, but he had 0 catches coming into this game. He had 3 big catches. His first catch came from Jarvis Landry, who threw him the ball. And then he had another catch, and obviously the game-winning touchdown. You had a lot of people call him Hollywood. So Hollywood Higgins, Rashard Higgins, who is kind of a mystery because it seems like the guys in the locker room love him, the fans love him, but with whatever coaching staff that comes in, doesn't seem like he gets his due. Like, he was not benched, but he like didn't even dress for the first few games, and then all of a sudden he comes in, you know, makes 6 catches for 100 and some yards, and, you know, and really was a key factor in that win. So
now, you as a coach, if you had a team and you had a couple of power players, but those power players created some division between maybe some other defensive people or whatever, would it be worth it for unity of the team to like sideline that person? Because that's what it feels like, both those guys.
And that's a great point, because sometimes, you know, we always talk about tangibles versus intangibles, you know, like when you go the combine, let's use in the NFL, they're measuring guys at you know, 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", 230 pounds that can run a 4.3, but they might overlook someone that might not quite have those measurables, but have all the other, you know, they have the IQ, they have, you know, they're a great teammate, they're the hardest worker. So I think when it comes to that, you know, I take production over potential any day of the week. And I think you kind of see that with the Browns tight end position, in the sense you hear all these things about David Njoku when he was coming in the league. The Browns took him, used a first-round pick. He is a freak athlete. I mean, look at the dude. He's basically Myles Garrett that can catch passes. But, you know, he's had his problems. He's been hurt. He's dropped a ton of passes. He's fumbled. You know, he's hasn't lived up to the hype. Whereas then you take this guy, Harrison Bryant, in the 4th round this year, you know, who produced in college, and all of a sudden he looks like the best tight ends the Browns have. And the Browns did a lot of their damage. You know, you're without Nick Chubb. You're without Austin Hooper, the big tight end signing in the offseason. You were without Odell the whole game. You're without your right guard. And, you know, so you're without 4 major key contributors on that offense. And Baker stepped up. But to go back to your point, I think sometimes, I don't want to say less is more, but I think chemistry is so underrated. Whereas, you know, you could have the most talent a lot of times, and usually talent does win out. You know, I will say talent generally trumps potential or hype, or, you know, the better team usually wins. The most talented team usually wins. But when all things being equal, I'd take that chemistry over, you know, versus trouble in the locker room or whatever it might be. So
yeah. So in the same breath that you'd hate to lose Odell for not playing him or from injury or something like that, if the whole team gets better because he's not there, I'm willing to weigh that out.
Yeah, and that remains to be seen. So, you know, I hope, and I agree with you, but I hope guys step up. I think the Browns, I believe the trade deadline is next. Well, it's next week. I'm not exactly sure of the day, but the Browns have about a week to figure out, hey, what holes do we need to fill? And honestly, the offense isn't the problem right now. It's the defense. The defense was so bad.
I don't think they stopped anything the entire day.
They really didn't. They had, you know, they got lucky on the first drive. Joe Burrow went right down the field with the Bengals, and the Bengals, give them credit, they have a decent offense. And Burrow threw for over 400 yards in that game, like first time as a rookie besides Pat Mahomes. I
always felt like every play they had one less person on the field.
It does. It does. Yeah. It seems like they had more players on the field because I just think have a talent gap on defense. If Myles Garrett or Denzel Ward weren't making a play, you know, it was, you know, the Bengals won that down.
Right.
So,
well, and you'd expect it if there was somebody on that offense that we were double covering or we're putting more effort, but there really wasn't anybody. Right. We weren't trying to stop one guy.
Right. Yeah. The Bengals have some nice players, you know, Tyler Boyd, AJ Green, but T. Higgins, but they don't have the dynamic playmaker that you have to double cover. Yep. They were, even without their starting running back, Joe Mixon, in that game, and the Browns still got gashed a lot on defense. So
now, and you know football more than I do, and you know when the Browns used to play that zone defense that they get eaten up by your better player. I didn't see anything that stood out that what they were doing wrong on defense. It just wasn't effective, whatever they were doing.
Yeah, I don't know if it's so much a scheme as the talent gap. And you know, the Browns do have some nice players. You know, Myles Garrett might be the best defensive player in the league this year. Denzel Ward, great corner, but you know, and they have some other nice pieces. Mack Wilson's a good linebacker. Oh boy, you know, I think although he dropped the ball, that Cameron Mitchell, you know, he had a free, you know, and that puts the game away too. And that's something else.
And those are the jitters that preseason works out when you're running before you catch the ball.
I'm sorry, you're a pro. You don't need preseason. Like you catch the ball.
I'm making an excuse for my boy Mitchell.
But I mean, that was a free pick six handed to him.
Yep.
You take it in, then I think they would have went up 14 or 11 or whatever it might have been, but you put the game away and you make it a 2-score game. But you know, it's besides Garrett, besides Ward, besides Ogunjobi, who's been solid, and besides maybe Mack Wilson, you know, the Browns have some glaring holes. So I think more so than a wide receiver. And I asked some people on Twitter and Facebook this past weekend, you know, what if you had to address one area of the Browns, where would you address? And a lot of people said the safety spot. And a huge loss for the Browns that, you know, maybe we didn't realize at the time was his name's Grant Delpit. He was their 2nd round pick out of LSU, and he was supposed to be in that, I believe it was the strong safety spot. And that's where that you hear a lot of people ripping on him, but Sendejo, he just seems to be every big play for the other team, he's there a step or two late. Yep. You know, and I hate to bag on one guy because, you know, as a defense, it really is a whole unit that makes it work. Because if we're not getting good pass rush on the quarterback, then you're leaving your DBs hanging out to dry. But at the same time, you know, if you're dropping picks and you're letting guys get open on, you know, a 3-step drop by the quarterback, and
can I tell you something?
Yeah.
Things are really good if after a win you won 5 games that we're talking about this,
yes,
rather than killing ourselves with penalties or, you know, all of the other stuff we used to complain about. We're blessed right now.
We really are 5-2. I think the Steelers are 6-0 and the Chiefs are 6-1. Those are the only teams with 6 wins in the league. So there's technically only 2 teams in the entire NFL out of the 32 teams that have more wins than the Browns.
That's right. So we are nitpicking now, and I love that we could be nitpicking.
And thank God for that, because we have been, we've you use the word blessed. I feel like we've been cursed before this. So it's not, you're right.
Okay. So now I mentioned penalties. Well, that was things that for the last decade, we couldn't get a handle on our line for getting either over aggressive or just no matter what, we would take away every good positive play with a stupid penalty. Right. How did we get that under control? Was it just coach?
You know what? I think a lot of it's coaching, because not all the time, but a lot of times the team takes the identity of the coach. And if you ever listen or look at Stefanski, he's never too high, he's never too low. He's always that real even keeled type guy. And he just has that, he has that, like, it's not a cockiness, it's not a swagger, but he has that just like calm confidence to him. And I think the team really, represents that. And, you're always going to have those outlandish guys. Baker Mayfield's always going to be, a huge, he's going to be pumped up when things are going really well, which is great. You need those guys, right. But you also need, the leaders of your team to make sure that they're keeping things calm, even, when things are going well or when things aren't, because the NFL season is a long season. Now, there's not a lot of games played, but 16 games in 17 weeks. And there's so much, and I'm perfect example of it right now. There's so much over exaggeration or so much emphasis put on one game or a couple plays, and it's a long season, and you have to sort of pace yourself. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You hear that as a cliche used a lot, but hopefully the Browns found their guy in the sense of their head coach. And I know there's a ton of Baker Mayfield haters out there. I know that, but give this guy credit where credit's due. He finished that game 22 of 23. His only incomplete pass was 16 seconds to spike the ball. Yep. So, he finished with almost 300 yards. That's having 0 yards after the first quarter and 5 touchdowns. So that's pretty impressive. 2 touchdowns to Harrison. He had a touchdown to Njoku. Peoples-Jones had a touchdown, and the other one's escaping me. I think it was Kareem Hunt that had the other touchdown. So, and you're doing that without the best running back in the league. You're doing that without your right guard. You're doing that without arguably one of the best receivers in the league and arguably one of the best tight ends in the league. So credit where credit's due.
Absolutely.
And the critics are going to say, well, the Bengals defense isn't very good. Well, he struggled a little bit in the second half against the Colts, but the Colts defense at the time was the best in the league. Yeah. Did he stink against the Steelers? 100%. He did. But again, their 2 losses this year are to the Ravens and the Steelers.
I'll take it.
You're not going to find, I would say the Ravens, and we'll get to the power rankings in a little bit, but Baltimore, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, probably the best 3 teams, not in the AFC, in the NFL.
Yep.
So if you're critiquing that, and do the Browns have to play better in those games? Yes, they do. They do. But you can only play the team that's in front of you. So hopefully, these games build up that confidence, and the Browns are not hoping they win. They're expecting to win. And that's hopefully the page you and I as fans and the players can turn that page and say, hey, let's go, let's go. We're
now I busted out my Johnny Manziel jersey that I hadn't even opened when he was playing, and I wore it for that game. So
does it have his name on the back?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah. Do I then wear it again this next week or not? Do you think I should keep it going?
Yeah. I even do this thing during games. If things, and this is such a weird superstition, like I was in the basement and my dog was like, we have this dog gate. So my dog and, my daughter don't like interact sometimes, because, you don't want to always keep your eyes on both of them at the same time. But like, so my daughter, who's only one, can like run around and have fun and play and not worry about the dog being there. And then the dog was wanting to come in, but I was sitting a certain way and things were going really, really well. I was like, no, I'm not getting her. I'm staying in this position until
Frozen
something
like
doesn't.
stone.
Yeah. So it's almost like, I think I had my leg tucked under my other leg and I was sitting like that. I think my right foot was asleep, and you know what? I didn't care because you know what? Things were going right.
You don't want to jack it up by moving.
And I've been that way since I've been like 6 years old. Some people call me weird, but you know what? Hey, to me, it works. And, like some of my friends or even my wife will be like, you know what? You really think that has an impact on the game? And I'm like, I don't think it. I know it. So,
or you don't want to take the risk of it being on you, and then you change everything.
Exactly. So, I remember going as far back as like a Browns game, when Bernie was the quarterback in like 1989, doing that when I was like probably in first grade, and it's just stuck with me all these years. So,
well, the text message that came in, Steelers Titans, best game of the weekend.
You know what? And Steelers Titans, best game of the weekend. I can't argue that. I did not watch all the game. I think this game, the Browns game from top to bottom, was a better game. The Steelers really dominated that Titans team in the first half. They were up 24-7. And then the Steelers really kind of slowed down in the second half. I think Big Ben threw 3 picks, and the Titans had a chance to tie the game. They missed a 40-yard field goal as time expired to tie the game to put it into overtime. But again, 2 really good teams in that game.
I forgot to gripe at this. Freaking kickers! Would you just hit extra points?
Oh. I'm glad you said that, because that was my last note on this Browns game. So Cody Parkey, who's been great this year. He's been great. Knock on wood. Okay. So I don't know his numbers offhand, but he hadn't missed an extra point or a field goal up to that point. But that might have seemed minor, like, oh man, there's 10 seconds left. Now the Bengals, if they can get into field goal range, which they didn't have time to get into field goal range, could have tied it with a field goal. But the bigger thing in that game, a lot of people had bet that game. The Browns were 3.5-point favorites.
Oh.
So if he makes that extra point, they go up 38-34. They're up 4. The Browns are covering. So he misses that extra point, 37-34. Now the Bengals are covering. So if you had the Browns in that game and you're like, oh, that touchdown, awesome, love it. And then Parkey misses that extra point. That's like a dagger. That's just like for a ton of money exchanged hands there. From one way to the other. Legal. I'm sure it was totally.
I would
legal.
Examine it and see if he's had any phone calls about like shank it, like he even knew what the point spread was. I'd totally ask that question.
Well, but on the other hand, too, could have made a lot of people that bet the Bengals a ton of money. Right. So like you said, who knows? But we're not going to get into shaving points or anything like that. That's not what this show's about. We'll let
you start talking about gambling. Come on.
Man. Well, you can go down a rabbit hole with the Vegas insiders on some of those. And there's one other game we're going to get into later that was technically what we call a bad beat. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. But Browns right now, we just said 5-2. And a lot of people, especially that are into the NFL, break the season down into quadrants. So, you take 4 different quadrants. So, the first 4 games, 3-1. Nice, Then now we're 5-2. So one more game will be to the halfway point of the season. We play at home. Actually, our next 3 games are at home, which is really, really nice. So next up, we got the Vegas Raiders at home. Then we got a bye week. Then you have the Texans, and then you have the Eagles. So, and then after that, you're at Jacksonville. So the schedule is very, very favorable coming up for the Browns. So we'll get into more of like the upcoming games on Thursday and next week. But the Browns look good right now.
Yeah,
the Browns,
for sure.
the defense, we got to plug a ton of holes, and hopefully that's the Browns have a great general manager. and hopefully he can address some of those
Yeah,
issues.
I mean, Miles can't carry the defense and disrupt it because once they key in on him.
Well, yeah, and he set a record, I think, for the Browns of most consecutive games with a sack. And he is on track to be the defensive player of the year. But again, if this was basketball, you can dominate the game with one player and, have a bunch, 4 other role players around you. But in football, you can't have, Garrett and Denzel Ward doing their thing and then having 9 other role players. You can't do that. You have to be on the same page as a team, and the defense has to get their act together.
Did you notice though, a couple of our DBs were playing a little bit loose with some calls that they didn't get called?
Oh yeah.
There was
Denzel Ward, to his credit, gets away with a lot because he's a hand fighter. He does that a lot. But I'm going to credit that to being an Ohio State grad and the coaching at Ohio State, because he does a fantastic job. And a lot of times, I think he's 5'10". He's not a big, tall dude, but he's covering a lot of guys that are 6-7 inches.
Right.
So you got to get every little advantage you can.
And as long as you can get them to tangle back with you. So I think some of the referees put up with it a little bit.
Exactly. And, that's one of my big beefs with officiating. It's more so in college football than NFL, is just let the guys play. If it's blatant, call it. But
that one pass to was Sample, that big tight end dude.
Yes.
He wrapped him up pretty good, and it would have been a call. But I mean, Sample caught 900 other passes in that game. So
yeah, but I mean, the Bengals, to their credit, I think they're they're an up and coming team. They're going to be good fast as long as they protect Joe Burrow and don't get him killed,
right?
Or else they'll be back to where they are. Mario, if you don't mind, I'm going to have you throw up that graphic on the screen. So I'm going to go over the NFL recap real quick. Try to do this in about 2 minutes, but we started on Thursday night with Daniel Jones being the meme of the year. So he, had a breakaway run, had an 80-yard run where he hit a peak speed of over 20 miles an hour by one of the graphics I saw, but just immediately stumbled and fell down at the 10-yard line and was tackled. So I think that one and the Tom Brady holding up 4 fingers, not knowing what down it was, are going to be the 2 memes of the year. Detroit, the Lions won on the final play of the game at the Falcons. The Falcons are really the NFL. The Falcons and the Texans are really the NFL's tough luck teams this year. Aaron Rodgers, he bolstered again his MVP campaign with the Packers as they bounce back for a 35-20 win. Tampa Bay looks like one of the best teams in the NFL right now after, just a couple weeks ago losing to the Bears. But Tampa and Tom Brady, they went out to Vegas and beat up on the Raiders, which is the Browns' next opponent. That game was a 24-20 game at one point, and they ended up winning 45-20. But Tom Brady and Ron Gronkowski have the second most touchdowns as a battery, tying Joe Montana and Jerry Rice at 92. Tom Brady and Drew Brees also are at the top of the NFL leaderboard, all time, approaching nearly 600 touchdown passes in their careers. So Tampa moves to 5-2, and again, like I said, the Raiders will next take on the Browns, traveling to Cleveland. They fall to 3-3. Suddenly, New England looks like one of the worst teams in the NFL. They fall to 2-4 and just got absolutely destroyed and beat up by San Francisco. And San Francisco is a absolutely beat up team as well. But they fell 33-6. And the 49ers, maybe we closed the book on them too soon, but they've looked good in the last couple games. We also had our first snow game of the season this year. The Kansas City Chiefs went into Denver. And, Denver's one of those places where it could be 90 degrees one day and then like snow about 8 inches the next day.
Kansas City looks so tight.
They look so good. So Kansas City is, they just destroyed Denver, and Denver's not a very good team, but they beat them up, and Mahomes only threw for like 200 yards and they still put up 43 points. So they win that game 43-16. And then what I thought, I know we had a text come in earlier saying the Steelers Titans game was the best game of the weekend. My personal opinion was the most exciting game of the weekend was Seattle at Arizona. Absolutely crazy game. Arizona wins that game 37-34. I actually went to bed with about 2 minutes left, thinking Seattle had it all locked up, and then I come to wake up in the morning realizing, well, Arizona went down, tied it. They were down 10 with about 3 minutes left. Went down, tied it, and then some missed kicks in overtime, but Arizona comes out on top in a crazy game. So I want to, and Joe, I'm going to have you agree or disagree with me on some of this, but I'm going to go over my list of worst teams in the NFL, and then I'm going to go over my top 10. Right. So my NFL power rankings for the bottom 5 teams, clearly to me, the Jets are the worst team in the league.
I'll go with that.
And then after that, coming into the season, I thought the Jaguars were going to be the best team in the league, the worst team in the league, but the Jets have surpassed them in that. The other New York team, the Giants, I have to put the Cowboys on this list now as one of the worst teams in the NFL. Just they're down to a third string quarterback now. And if you didn't see, oh my God, Andy Dalton got destroyed. It was maybe one of the worst hits I've ever seen a quarterback take. A player from Washington, and I can't think of his name, but he just absolutely destroyed. And it was a very dirty play, very dirty hit. But Andy Dalton's going to be out at least a week, but I see him being out a couple weeks after that hit. It was just brutal. And then I'm putting the Atlanta Falcons on that list. I hate to do that. They're 1-6 right now, but they just seem to find a new way to lose every week. And, they had that game against Cowboys early on. They've lost a bunch of tight games, but they just, I think it was Bill Parcells or someone said, you are what your record is. And, whether it's a tough loss or a bad loss or whatever it might be, the Falcons are just in that camp of, they just can't find a way to win right now this year. So now
I hate to go back to the Browns again, but we were that team so long for so many years. I mean, every season somebody has to be the worst team and they have to have those problems. And we were for so many years. It's about time somebody else gets their chance.
Well, I think it's a 2-team race for the worst team in the league between the Jets and the Jaguars. The Giants aren't very good, but they're competitive in a lot of these games. So I'm gonna say the Jets and the Jaguars by far the worst 2 teams.
That's probably pretty accurate. It is good to see though that like Tom Brady leaving New England, you want to see that team struggle when you're not there, just because it raises your value so much more.
Well, and you see too. I mean, Tom Brady's 43 years old, and he's still and he's not a very athletic quarterback, but he makes throws. He makes his teammates better. They're bringing in Antonio Brown now, so I think. He kind of reminds me of, and I'm no way comparing him athletically to LeBron, but I'm comparing him in the sense of he's a leader, much like LeBron. LeBron gets other guys, especially not at this point in his career, to come in and play with him to make the team better. And Antonio Brown, again, he might be a cancer in the locker room, but if he is, I think they'll shoot him right out of there. But for the most part, I think Tom Brady has really, made that team better. Bruce Arians, good coach, but they're always a team that tends to be penalized and tends to make a lot of mistakes. With Jameis Winston last year, they were throwing interceptions left and right, but Tom Brady isn't making those mistakes. I don't think he has a turnover the last 2 games. So let's get into and I'm going to go over my top 10 power rankings for the NFL. And then we'll switch gears to college football. Okay. So I have the Browns coming in at number 10, 5-2.
Now, is this a metric placement or an emotional placement?
This is just my honest opinion. Okay. I was between 3 teams for this spot: the Browns, the Rams, and the Bears. And I think on a neutral field, the Browns probably beat both of those teams. Now the Rams, I think I don't know. They're an overall maybe better team than the Browns, but I personally think the Browns on a neutral field would probably win that game. So that's why I'm putting the Browns in at number 10. At number 9, I have the Arizona Cardinals. Again, 5-2. They have a dynamic quarterback and maybe the best receiver in the league with DeAndre Hopkins. So I'm putting them, and they are in arguably we said, and the Browns and the Cardinals, number 10 and 9, are in probably the best divisions in football. The Browns obviously have the Ravens and Steelers ahead of them, and then you look at Arizona; they're in the West. In that league, there's no bad teams. You have Seattle, you have the Rams, you have Arizona, and you have the 49ers. All good teams. Coming in at number 8, I have Buffalo. Buffalo really, really struggled versus the Jets in the first half, but I think they made 6 field goals to win that game, 18-10. But Buffalo, their only 2 losses are against 2 really good teams, much like the Browns. So I'm going Buffalo at 8. Seattle, I would have Seattle much higher, but they found a way to lose that game on Sunday night. I would probably have Seattle as high as 3 if they would have won that game, but their defense is a little suspect, but they do have, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the league in Russell Wilson. Number 6, I have the Green Bay Packers. They're sitting at 5-1. They really dominated this past week. Their only loss is to Tampa Bay, who did dominate them. And that's why I have Tampa Bay at number 5. Tampa did beat Green Bay head to head. That's why, even though they have the worst record at 5-2, I'm putting Tampa Bay at number 5.
That's crazy how much a quarterback can take a mid-pack team and right up to the top 5.
Well, and if you look at Green Bay, Green Bay, their roster, at least on the offensive side, isn't too flashy, but when you have that quarterback, it makes such a difference in deciding a game and the outcome. So let's see. So to review real quick, we got the Browns at 10, Cardinals at 9, Bills at 8, Seattle at 7, Green Bay at 6, Tampa at 5. I'm going to put the Tennessee Titans at 4. Tennessee's only loss was to Pittsburgh this past week, and it was really at the buzzer. Pittsburgh dodged a bullet by Tennessee missing that kick. So the Titans are still a really, really solid team and showed that they can fight and come back. I have the Ravens at number 3. The Ravens only losses to Kansas City this year, and this weekend is going to be a huge matchup. You got Baltimore and Pittsburgh matching up. So, and that's why I have Pittsburgh at number 2. So if Baltimore wins, I'd probably flip-flop those two and put Baltimore at 2 and Pittsburgh at 3. But
with the drum roll,
Steelers, I want to talk real quick about the Steelers just because we're in this area. But the Steelers, I hate on the Steelers a lot, but they really do look good this year. Yeah. They really do. Their defense is fantastic. And as long as their offense can move the ball, and they have a great receiving core, they have a decent enough running game to move the chains, so they look really good. And with Roethlisberger back there instead of his backups, they look much better. And then finally, number 1, you have the defending champs at the Kansas City Chiefs. They did drop a game earlier on to the Raiders, who are playing the Browns this weekend, but that looked like a much different Raiders team and a Kansas City team that maybe was caught sleeping a little bit in that game. And so I'm putting the Chiefs at number 1. If Pittsburgh wins this weekend, I'll probably put them at number 1. But in the top 5 there, you have a clear list. And if you look at my top 4 teams, they're all in the AFC, all of them. So really, really top to bottom, a pretty nice list here. And, right now, the Browns, I believe, would be sitting in the 6th spot and would be playing, that would put them in the 3rd spot. I believe they would be playing, not the Steelers. Steelers would be 1. I'm not sure who they'd be playing. Oh, they'd be matching up with Tennessee, I believe, in the first round of the playoffs, if the playoffs started today. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see how that plays out.
Still a lot of games to go.
Way too early to think about
but
that.
Still, as stacked as the AFC is, it's going to be playoffs are going to be a weird thing this year.
Yeah, no doubt. Again, I want to remind everyone of our text and voicemail line. So if you have any voicemails or text messages for comments, feel free to call in at 330-333-5265. Again, that's voicemail or text message, 330-333-5265. And
the regular number, if you want to get on the line and talk to Justin, and we'll put you on the air, is 330-595-1600.
Very good. So let's switch gears to college football. And, obviously this is we've been waiting for several weeks for this to get going, but Ohio State back on the field, the Big Ten back on the field, and just an awesome feeling to wake up Saturday morning and have, Ohio State in front of you. Like, to me, with the Browns struggles, maybe the last, 15 years or so, I've always been, that's kind of been my thing. You wake up Saturday morning, you're feeling good about the weekend. And,
at least you had your Buckeyes.
Yeah. And luckily we still got them. So, but that first drive, I'm just going to go over this real quick. Nebraska took the ball down on the first possession and went right down the field to go up 7-0 in that game. It was a little bit, concerning being the first series of the year, but they really seemed to take that punch and get back into the game. Justin Fields, early Heisman favorite, along with, you probably got, Trevor Lawrence, you have Bama's quarterback Jones, and you have Fields as probably the three Heisman favorites for the rest of the season. But Justin Fields went 20 of 21, so a nearly perfect weekend. Threw for 276 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he had another one rushing, and he was the leading rusher on the team with 54 yards. So the Ohio State ground game in the first half didn't look super great, but they bounced back in the second half and then eventually rushed for about 215 yards as a team. Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, the two receivers, looked fantastic. Were the leading receivers, but Fields spread the ball all around. 8 different receivers got in, and if you didn't see it, there was just an unbelievable catch by a true freshman, Jackson Smith Njigba. Really interesting name.
Yeah.
But one of the top recruits in the country, just comes right in and makes this fantastic catch. We'll have more Buckeye talk on Thursday, but the Buckeyes are going to travel to Happy Valley and face Penn State on Halloween night. In the game this past Saturday, though, Chris Olave went down. Nebraska got called for like 3 targeting calls in that game, and I believe that was one of them. And he looked to me like he had a concussion. I don't know if he did or not. Ohio State does not release that information to the public, so we're gonna have to keep checking in on his status. Ohio State's best receiver, they're gonna need him in that test on Saturday. So in another gambling note, a bad beat. So Ohio State, earlier in the week, they were a 26-point favorite. And then I think the line jumped up to 28 at game time. So Ohio State was up 45-17, which, by the way, I predicted on the show last week.
Did you really?
It was my final score, 45-17. It was 45-17 with 18 seconds to go. And Ohio State scores on their last play of the game to push the line to 52-17. So 28 points would have been a push. So, you don't win, you don't lose, but that touchdown, if you were betting Nebraska, that caused Ohio State to cover the spread. So if you had Nebraska plus 28, you were not a happy person when that touchdown was scored, because I think that was 4th down and it was on the last play of the game for the Buckeyes on offense. I don't know,
for a show that doesn't talk about gambling, you sure as well talk about a lot of gambling.
Well, you know what, though? I just, through text messages and stuff, and like I said, I got a few degenerate friends that like to place an honest bet here or there, but a couple of them were, I had both sides of the fence. A couple of them were really happy, a couple of them not so happy. But I just thought that was an interesting news. I'm going to have Mario queue up another picture here of the this week's AP top 25. So I'm going to just go over a few games and we'll talk a little bit about the top 25 as we move on. So again, it was awesome to have Ohio State back, but not just that, it's great to have the entire Big Ten conference back. It just feels like college football is whole again once the Big Ten is back. And the rest of college football had a 6 week head start on the Big Ten, but it just felt like college football was back and complete again this weekend. So in the Big Ten, we had a couple of the bigger upsets this weekend. Rutgers, who we bag on Rutgers on this show, but I'm going to give Rutgers credit where credit's due. They snapped a 21-game Big Ten losing streak, and they were a double-digit underdog at Michigan State, and they handled Michigan State this weekend.
Nice, go Rutgers!
Yeah, so the Scarlet Knights, really stopped that streak. So Greg Schiano, former Rutgers head coach, who's back there now. He was former Ohio State defensive coordinator. So he maybe, looks to have a competitive team at least this year. Maybe not a
They
good
won't be
team,
the charity case of the Big Ten,
exactly, right? Which might be Michigan State. Michigan State looks really, really bad right now. And Mark D'Antonio left that program in trouble. We'll see how they handle the rest of the season, but right now they do not look good. They actually play the other Michigan team this weekend, so we'll see how that goes as Michigan had
what other team?
That team up north?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, they play that team up, Harbaugh's team up north. And Vegas right now has that team up north versus that team up north State as a 25-point underdog. Unbelievable to me, as they have dominated that rivalry. Now they're on the other side of that. Yeah. So it does not look good. Rutgers' opponent this week, the Indiana Hoosiers, had faced Ohio State's opponent this coming weekend, Penn State, and there was a really, really controversial finish in that game. The Hoosiers won in overtime with a diving 2-point conversion. So, Indiana that was just one of those games. Indiana looked like they had that game won, and then all of a sudden Penn State flipped it, and they looked like they had that game won. So the first, 56 minutes of that game, kind of bland, but the last 4 minutes plus overtime of that game were some of the best football I've seen all year. But Indiana ended up winning that game 36-35, and that was the first time they beat a top 10 team since 1987. And their coach, he was just like, you know what, we're going for the win. So I give him a lot of respect. Being at home, being the underdog, you go for the win. So Penn State, they're missing some people, but they should be still Penn State. They should be able to go out. But they just did not look that good. And, they obviously play the Buckeyes this weekend. So Penn State is in serious jeopardy of starting the season 0-2. So we'll see how they do this weekend.
Now, do you have a preference for games that stay close the entire time to make you watch down to the last second?
You know what? Like let's see. If it's Ohio State, I want the Buckeyes to roll,
Blow them out.
Blow them out.
Third quarter, do something else.
But yeah, and like I said, I'm not personally a betting guy, but I'm in a couple pick'ems and a couple different leagues where you bet against the spread and stuff like that. But for me, it's just more entertainment. I would rather see a good game and it lose in the game I'm playing in rather than a boring game. Where I want to, where it's like 45-10, like the Minnesota game this weekend wasn't very good. So, and that was like a hyped game that was supposed to be good. So I would take the Indiana Penn State game, like, and the outcome of that any day of the week.
When it's your team though,
when it's not my team.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And those games are the kind of games where if you end up winning, it's such an awesome feeling. It's like euphoria. But if you lose, it is absolutely like a knife in the heart. You know what I mean? It's, it feels like life and death, but honestly, it's truly not. So,
and again, I must point out that you might not be a degenerate, but I think you're in denial on your gambling. I do.
When I go to Vegas, my closet gambler comes out. You know, I throw a lot of money at a lot of games, do a lot of parlays. Sometimes I pick some futures and things like that. But
see, you pay attention to enough games and enough leagues that you've got an advantage over most people, except for like the double zeros of these bad beat spreads that have been coming up.
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. Just one other note from the Big Ten. This is really, really interesting. Wisconsin, Wisconsin is known for having strong, really, really good running backs and big, great offensive line. This year they have a really, really good quarterback, a freshman quarterback, was elevated to the starter. They had their first string quarterback had surgery. So, the quarterback's name is Mertz, I believe and he had a fantastic game against, they played Illinois. So Illinois, not a very good team, but he set program records for completion percentage, consecutive completion, and threw for 5 touchdowns in his first game as a starter. So great first performance. But I want you to remember this. Cone, who is Wisconsin's starting quarterback, out right now with surgery. This quarterback, Mertz, who just had this fantastic game, was diagnosed with COVID after the game, or a day or two after the game. Their backup to him has also tested positive for COVID.
No way.
They play Nebraska this weekend, and they will be on their 4th string quarterback. So, so that's something really, really interesting. Yeah. So with the Big Ten protocols too, if you test positive for COVID, you are out for 21 days. I think the national CDC guidelines are 10 days.
Yeah, 14,
10 or 14. Yeah. And so the Big Ten has really upped the ante, and it's 21 days of football activity. So we'll see exactly if there's any update on there. And if there is, I'll give you that on Thursday's show. But very interesting on the 4th string quarterback. And then just last college football note, Notre Dame, who's now was the number 3 team in the country. They're still in the top 4. They just annihilated Pittsburgh this weekend, or Pitt, 45-3. Pat Narduzzi, Pitt's head coach, hails from right here in Youngstown. He's an Ursuline grad, but they just really, really struggled. And Notre Dame just completely dominated this game after having kind of a lackluster performance the week before. Notre Dame is going to play at Clemson in 2 weeks, so that's going to be one of the biggest matchups in the year, number 1 versus number 4. So we'll see how that game goes in a couple weeks. But that is that's our news around college football. I'm going to have Mario cue up a little video here in a minute. This is one of my favorite comedians and favorite videos of his that go with sports. But George Carlin does a great bit, and rest in peace, George Carlin, by the way. But he does a great bit, baseball versus football, and I'm gonna have you listen to that right now. If you can't hear this, then sure.
All right.
All right, we're back. Had a little audio trouble there, so maybe we'll play that again on Thursday for Thursday's show. So I do want to talk a little bit about the World Series. One of the best games from all of baseball this season was Game 4 of the World Series. Tampa came back and to beat the Dodgers on I believe that was Friday night. So just a fantastic baseball game. The next night, the Dodgers were able to come back and take a 3-2 series lead. So we do have Game 6 tonight. The Rays look to their Cy Young winner from 2018, Blake Snell. He's going to be on the mound tonight, and they're going to be looking to force a Game 7, whereas obviously the Dodgers are the favorites, but they're going to be looking to close the game out. These games are all being played in Arlington, Texas, in a bubble. But one of the things I took away from watching these games over the weekend, and I just, once the Indians go out, I have a tendency to like check in on the games, but not watch them all the way through. But once, a couple of these bigger plays or bigger moments in the games, it was really cool because they're allowing 10,000 fans at the stadium, plus they're piping in a little bit of noise still. So it really does sound like a true legit atmosphere for a big time playoff game. So that's something that I think is really cool. For the Dodgers, Clayton Kershaw, who tends to get a lot of negative press when it comes to postseason performance. He's one of the best all-time pitchers, especially in the regular season. But he tends to get a lot of flack for the Dodgers. But he has been excellent in this series. He's won two of the 3 games for the Dodgers as their starter, and looks to probably be the MVP if the Dodgers are able to close it out. So, in my opinion, I think the Rays are going to win tonight and force a winner take all in Game 7 on Wednesday. But we will see, and we'll know the results by our next show. Excuse me, on Thursday. So we'll have a little recap of the World Series on Thursday's show. Now. Final topic of the day. And again, if you have any thoughts or opinions on this, we have a little bit of time left. But I thought I'd bring Joe back, and, we're approaching Halloween, and I thought it'd be cool to talk a little bit about Halloween movies, or maybe, like a little bit of the horror genre in general. Right now, at home, I'm watching, there's a series on Netflix called The Haunting of Hill House, and it's a 10 episode. I think I'm on episode 8 or 9 right now, but it's one of those shows where it really gets you thinking. It's a psychological thriller, but it makes it feel like it's real, and it makes it feel like you're in there. So you're kind of doing like one of these sometimes during the show. But that kind of got me into like the Halloween mood and Halloween spirit this year. But there's so many great Halloween movies, so many great horror movies. I know that's not everybody's like cup of tea, but Joe, you a Halloween guy? Halloween movie?
None of your traditional ones. I'm more of a psychopath, so I like the Saw series.
Okay.
And I don't like slashers, and I don't like blood for that. But for that, it's such like a intellectual movie wrapped up in the gore.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. When I was a kid, and I would probably like sneak and somehow watch like A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah. Right.
And that, to this day, still freaks me out a little bit. Whereas like Jason and Friday the 13th, those aren't really scary to me, but Friday the 13th is more of like, oh shit, he's haunting my dreams. Like, and then he can come into real life, so that's always kind of a horror genre that's kind of freaked me out. The Conjuring series,
yes,
always kind of freaky because
Children of the Corn, even those like really low budget feeling movies, gotcha, Any
movies that have freaky kids in it too.
Right.
Freaky kids or freaky dolls, like the Annabelle doll series, and that goes right along with the Conjuring movies. Those are freaky.
Do you like the Blair Witch Project?
You know what? When I was in high school, that came out, and the internet really wasn't. I mean, it was around, but it wasn't like, you know, to go search for something like that, it would take, you know, 10 minutes. Whereas now you click it in.
Right.
So we thought that movie when it first came out was real. Like we thought that was legit. And maybe that was us just being naive or dumb high school kids, but
well, they framed it that way, so it felt like that.
Yeah, it felt like it was found footage and it was real. But you know, now, you know, like the jump scares and stuff still will get me, but it doesn't really scare me in the sense of like you know, but you know, back then it felt more scary. But
all right, so let's do favorites in each one of those different areas.
Okay,
so my the gory ones, Saw is definitely my favorite. All of them, honestly.
Okay.
What about you for the
all
gore?
Right, for gore, I'm not a gore person, so I'm not really into the Saw movies as much, but I do like. There's one movie, it's called The Cabin in the Woods. And it has, you know, there's like these four high school kids or college kids in it. And there always has to be like a way, like there's this creepy noise that comes in the basement, and then they pick an object, and whatever object they pick determines like whatever the things are that's going to come kill them. But like, it turns out I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but there's like this big twist at the end, and it's really interesting. And it's almost like a horror comedy in the sense of like, it makes you laugh, but there's some freaky shit in there. So I'd put that one if I have to pick gore, because there is a lot of blood and a lot of killing in that one. So I would put that one as top of my gore.
All right. So what about like supernatural or ghosty? Not necessarily killing and blood, but ghosty.
Sure. Oh man, I like. In the Nightmare on Elm Street one, I guess that almost has a little bit of gore side to it too, because there's a little bit. That one is freaky to me. I would say. Let me think about that. Let's go to you while I'm thinking about that one.
So I got two,
Okay.
and first one is Poltergeist.
Oh, okay.
As a kid, that freaked me out, right?
Okay.
And then the second was 13 Ghosts. That was not necessarily like Halloween, but it had a cool storyline.
That had with the wheel.
Yes,
and
right.
Yep. So you said, what was the first? You said Poltergeist.
Poltergeist, yep.
So I will say that villain, or whatever you want to call him, the older guy with the hat.
In his holy temple. God is in his holy temple.
That is maybe one of the most underrated villains in horror history. I think he is a creepy ass dude.
Oh, yes, he is.
And that guy will freaking haunt your dreams. So yeah, I would put that up there. One that is kind of creepy too is the Mothman Prophecies, if you've ever seen that.
Yes. Yeah.
And that actually is based on a true story. I don't know if it was the 60s or 70s, but down in West Virginia, Ohio, like right on the border there, Mount Pleasant, I think was the town's name. And there was this spooky and, you know, tradition, or not tradition, but the spooky entity, and that the town it became this huge, scary thing in the town. So to me, that's another one. When I was younger, Child's Play was kind of a freaky one.
Yeah.
And I, for whatever reason, I've never liked dolls, whatever kind of doll it might be. There is another movie called Dead Silence, and it has to do with this guy that's like a ventriloquist dummy guy, but like, it's your typical thing. It involves like an older creepy house and like dolls and like creepy adults and stuff like that. But my biggest, and let me ask you a question. Sure. Do you have any pet peeves with horror movies? Because I have one big one that stands out to me.
I can't think of it. Share yours.
My biggest pet peeve with horror movies is, okay, so there always seems to be this backstory of, oh, we're going to buy this house and we're going to fix it up. And, but there's always like some creepy ass stuff that happened at it. Conjuring's a perfect example. The Haunting at Hill House is a perfect example.
Amityville Horror.
Amityville is another one. Yeah, all these they have very similar undertones to it, and the kids always see the shit first. You know, it's always the kids or the pets that are creeped out or freaky, and the parents. It's always a dumbass parent. The parents are always like, "Oh, you're just imagining things," and it's like, no, believe your kids, believe your animals, man. So to me, it's always like, why do the parents have to be stupid in all of these movies? So that's my biggest pet peeve with all of these. But I guess if the parents weren't dumb, it wouldn't make for a very good.
Yeah, and you got to dissociate yourself from reality to buy into it anyhow. So quit being annoyed so easy. Jeez.
So yeah, so I got to put like.
So okay.
Yeah, no, go ahead. No, go ahead.
And then so my next category was going to be like the poppy or kids, movies. So do you have a favorite one? Scream. Scream
for sure. Okay. Yeah, because I think that's good entertainment. And it also like keeps you on the edge of your seat. And it's kind of like got some jump scares in there, but it's also kind of like a comedy too, mixed in with a horror. So that would be mine.
What about that Nightmare Before Christmas? That was, that's considered a Halloween-ish, right?
Yeah. And you know what? I can't claim to have seen that start to beginning.
Okay.
I've seen like, 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there. But yeah, I would put that up there. Ghostbusters though would be another one.
For sure.
Yeah, like Ghostbusters, like just good quality entertainment.
Yeah,
a little bit scary in some parts, maybe if you're younger, but I didn't love the new one, the remake, but the old ones, even the second one was really good. Just good quality actors in those movies, and just good stuff. So
have you ever had a supernatural run-in?
Oh boy. I have not, like, I've never seen a ghost or anything like that. I will say there is something called sleep paralysis that's out there. And I have, and I shit you not, I have one time where I had a feeling I was laying in bed and, like I wake up and it's like 2 or 3 a.m. And all of a sudden I like look up at the ceiling and there's nothing there. It's not like but I just felt like something was around, and like, I don't know if I had a bad dream and I woke up and I'm like a little creeped out from that, but I just sat there and it probably was 2 or 3 minutes, but I felt like my body was completely like paralyzed and I couldn't move. I felt like I couldn't breathe. And what was probably like 2 or 3 minutes felt like an hour, and you just feel really creeped out. And I got eventually I was able to like turn on a light and I felt better, but like I still remember that to this day. And I was probably, I wasn't young. I was probably 18 or 19 at the time. I think I was in college, and I don't know if I was drunk and hungover or whatever, or I just had a bad dream or whatever it was, but I still remember that. How about you?
We'll do it on your next show. I'll share some of the stories. We should do like a Halloween episode.
Yeah.
And so I'll share some of my more intimate, scary ones with you when we do that one.
All right. Let me just ask you this.
Yes.
Have you, and just a yes or no question, do you feel like you've ever seen a ghost before?
Yes.
All right. We got to know. We got to know on that. All right. We got to hear this story. So let me tell you this we'll close the show here in a minute or two. But let me open the lines too. If you have any, obviously we want to keep this sports oriented, but being that it's Halloween on Saturday, if you have any cool, true stories, 330-333-5265. If you have any stories that maybe you were paranormal or freaked out or anything like that.
Or you built a baseball field for a bunch of old New York Yankees, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And they come out of the cornfields in Iowa, whatever. So yeah, if anybody out there has any, one, scary movies, or two, supernatural maybe experiences, that's a realm we really haven't dove into in the show before, but I would love to hear those. So feel free to share those with us, and we'll go from there. But we'll hear some of Joe's on Thursday, and like I said, I don't really personally have any of those stories except for that one experience, and like thinking about it now still creeps me out. But one other show I wanted to share too, and it goes kind of like sci-fi. It's almost kind of like the 2020 version of
Twilight Zone.
Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
It's Black Mirror.
Right.
Black Mirror is a show I highly, highly recommend. If you've never seen it, it's on Netflix. The creator of that show actually said they're not releasing the new season in 2020 because it would be too realistic.
Right. I can see that.
Basically, they were like, this show is so on point that, we've had enough bad stuff happen in 2020. We don't want to creep anyone out anymore. So I'm going to dive into a little bit more of my, there's some of those like cutesy movies like Hocus Pocus that are on every night and stuff like that. But, feel free to, think about some of those for our next show and share those for some of the next shows.
Is this the first time you've gotten through your show notes in one show?
Probably.
This is the first time I've seen you reach the last page.
Probably, yeah. And for those watching on TV or on Facebook, like
look at this.
All right, let me.
The dude here. I'm gonna give you some camera pan.
3,
so they
4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
look at
9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 pages. Oh, 13. Halloween. Very superstitious number. But I like to be over prepared. Sometimes that's not the best thing, but rather be over
every show you impress me with how the length that you will go to have content for your viewers.
And like at first I wanted to just have bullet points and do talking points, and I can do that a lot for some shows, but when it comes to breakdowns and numbers, I just want to be prepared. And somebody once told me, if you're hosting your own show, you better be the smartest person on that show, So when we have guests on the show, I like to take their expertise and just ask questions to get to know. But it's always good to have like I said, I'd rather be over prepared than under prepared.
Yeah.
And I'll leave it at that.
On Thursday, I want to talk about, and just as a layman watching college sports, like how do they, I didn't understand the seeding process before all of this stuff happened, but when you're a team that's like 5 games behind everybody else, how are they going to do this legitimately where you can have playoffs and whatever? And I don't need you to answer this now, but just, what do they do with a team like Ohio State, and you compare them against somebody who's got, 9
for seeding, you said?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. You know what? And that's something I need to look more into, but we can get into that on Thursday, and the rest of the year really going forward, because they're going to be playing regular season games up until December 12th. Yep. So we'll get into that on Thursday. So again, thanks everybody for listening. I do want to play that George Carlin clip on Thursday.
Oh, so, okay, gotcha.
So we'll play that. Or Mario, are you able to play that now? Okay. All right. We'll try to get that queued up for Thursday. But if you don't get a chance, just Google George Carlin baseball football if you're not able to listen. But again, follow us. And another thing you can do is if you can like and review and rate the show on whatever podcast platform you listen to, that'd be great. So again, thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Joe. Sure. Thanks to Mario behind the scenes. And we'll see you guys on Thursday.
Thank you for listening to this show on Studio. If you like our programming, we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow our Facebook page, or subscribe to your favorite podcast platform like iTunes or Spotify. This is original Youngstown content, and we would appreciate you sharing the videos and the word about us. Thank you.